Hello everyone. Today inshallah we are going to start solving the problems of chapter number 17, the process costing. Today inshallah we are going to start solving start with solving question number 40. So please open your books on problem 1740. Of course this problem considers the case of having a beginning inventory and also having an ending inventory, and according to this problem we are going to solve the problem using the weighted average method and also using the first in first out method, and also according to this problem we are going to consider the availability of transferred in cost. Therefore, as we can see, this is an integrative problem that we are going to solve in order to see how we are going to apply the process costing on such a case. Therefore, who can read, or who would like to read for us? Yes, please.
Transferred in cost, weighted average, and FIFO method. Free-to-lay incorporation manufacture convenience food, including potato chips and corn chips. Production of corn chips occurs in 4 departments: cleaning, mixing, cooking, and drying and packing.
Therefore, as we can see here, we have 4 different departments. Of course, in this case or in this problem, we are going to focus upon only one department, which is the last department. Go ahead.
Consider the drying and packing department, where drying material backing are added at the end of the process. Therefore,
the first thing that we need to consider in a process costing system, as we said, is to classify costs according to when they are added to the production process. They said that the direct materials are added at the end of the process. Therefore, this would be the direct materials category.
Conversion costs are added evenly during the process.
And of course, the conversion costs are added evenly onto the process.
The accounting records of a free-to-lay plant provide the following information for corn chips in the drying and packing department during a weekly period, week 37.
Therefore, we are now to consider the period of only 1 week, which is week 37. Therefore, we are going to consider all the costs for this problem to be related to one specific period, in this case, week 37. What would be, or what is the costs, or what is the information that is provided?
We have a beginning work in the process, physical units 1,200.
Beginning work in process 1,200.
Transferred in cost. This is the end.
Yes, transferred in.
26,550.
The transferred in cost, you mean?
Yes, for the beginning work in process.
Yes. How much?
Direct material, 26,750.
750.
Direct material 0.
Direct material 0.
Conversion cost 4,020.
Conversion costs. How much?
4,020.
4,020. Yes.
Transferred in during week 37, we have from cooking department, physical units 4,020 and 200.
What is the number of units, please, again?
4,200.
4,200.
Also completed during week 37. This completed and transferred out. 4,000 units.
Yes.
Ending work in the process for week 37. We have 1,400 physical units.
1,400.
Yes. Physical units.
Yes.
And then we have total cost added during week 37. We have transferred in cost 91,510. Total cost added.
How much?
For transferred in 91,510. And for direct material, 23,000. And for conversion cost, 27,940. 27,940.
900. Therefore, as we can see here, we have a beginning work in process by the number of 1,200. We have transferred in from the cooking department 4,200 units. The completed and transferred out 4,000, and the ending work in process is 1,400. The costs that were incurred in a previous period, which is week 36, that would be transferred cost 26,750. Direct materials $0, conversion cost 4,020, and the costs that were added in this period in week 37 is as follows: 91,510 as transferred in cost, 23,000 as direct materials cost, and 27,940 as conversion costs. Now let us consider the percentage of completion for the beginning work in process and the ending work in process.
For the beginning work in process, transferred in cost
100%.
Direct material is unknown.
Therefore, for the beginning work in process, the direct materials would be, because as we know, or as the case says, that the direct materials are added at the end of the production process. Therefore, if it took the direct materials, it would be finished. Therefore, because we have it as beginning work in process, which means it is not finished yet, therefore the direct materials, or the percentage of completion for the direct materials, would be 0%. Of course, this was unknown, and we have just deduced it from the question. Therefore 0% as direct materials percentage of completion. The conversion 25%.
Now for the ending work in process,
Yes,
transferred in cost
100%.
direct material.
Also unknown. In the question, also unknown the direct materials, because we have it as an ending work in process, therefore it is not finished, and we know that the direct materials are added at the end of the production process. Therefore, the direct materials for the ending work in process would be 0%, or the percentage of completion in regard of the direct materials would be 0%. The conversion cost 50%. Of course, this is the information that is given according to question or problem 1740. Of course, as we can see here, we have only two stated, let us say, classification of costs. The first is the direct materials, because it is added at the end of the production process or manufacturing process, and the conversion costs, the second category, because it is added evenly onto the production process. Of course, we have another category which is not said within the problem itself, which is the transferred in costs, which are always added at the beginning of the production process. Of course, the transferred in costs are costs that are incurred in the cooking department, in the previous department. The first requirement.
Requirement number 1, including the weight average method. Summarize the total drying and baking department cost for week 37 and assign total cost to units completed and transferred out and to units in ending work in process.
Therefore, we need to perform our 5-step procedures, because they need us to assign the cost to the ending work in process and to the transferred out units or to the finished goods units. Therefore, or to the warehouses that has been transferred out to the warehouses. Therefore, we need to start with the 5-step procedure. Why do we need to use the 5-step procedure? Because as we said in the last lectures or in the previous lectures, because we have ending work in process. Because we have ending work in process, we need to use the 5-step procedure. And because we have a beginning work in process, we need to designate or determine the inventory valuation method that needs to be used. Of course, according to the question, the first requirement is to use the weighted average. Therefore, let us start with our steps. Step number 1 would be the summarization of physical units. The summarization of physical units. We need to answer 2 questions. Where did the physical units come from and where did they go? Therefore, let us start with step number 1. Of course, the best way to apply the steps is according to the schedules that we took in the previous lectures. Of course, step number 1, which is the physical or the summarization of the physical units, is as follows. The work in process beginning, we have 1,200 units. The transferred in, during the current period, is 4,200. Therefore, the total would be 5,400, which is the total of units to account for. Excellent. This is the answer of the first question. Let us answer now the second question. Where did these units go? The first would be completed and transferred out. According to the question, they were 4,000 units. And at the end, we have the work in process ending. According to the question, these were 1,400. Of course, with a total of also 5,400 units. Of course, these are the total units accounted for. And of course, as we can see here, the to account for and the accounted for are equal. Now, let us consider step number 2. Step number 2 is the calculation of the equivalent units for these physical units. Of course, as we can see here, because we are using the weighted average method, we did not separate among the costs, and we are not going to separate among the units that were started in previous months or previous periods and the units that were started or transferred in this period, because we are using the weighted average method. Of course, now when we are going to consider the first in, first out method, we are going to separate between the two. Now let us consider step 2, which is the equivalent units. Of course, for 3 categories. The first is the transferred in, the second the direct materials, and the third is the the second is the conversion costs. Therefore, for the 4,000 completed and transferred out, of course, because they are completed and transferred out, therefore they took 100% of the transferred in, they took 100% of the direct materials, and they took 100% of the conversion costs. Therefore, the equivalent units for the 4,000 would be 4,000 for all categories. Now, for the 1,400 units, of course, according to our question, the percentage of completion is 100%, 0%, 50%. Therefore, it took 100% of transferred in, 0% of direct materials, and 50% of conversion cost. Therefore, we are now to use these percentages in order to calculate the equivalent units. In order to calculate the equivalent units, we are going to multiply the percentage of completion for each category of course with the number or with the physical units, or the number of physical units. Therefore, 1,400 multiplied by 100%, 1,400. 1,400 multiplied by 0%, 0. 1,400 multiplied by 50%, 700. Now, let us calculate the total equivalent units for each category. 5,400, 4,000, and 4,700. This is the end of step number 2. Of course, because we are using the weighted average, we did not separate between the units that has been transferred in the previous month or the previous period and the units that has been transferred in this current period. Also, we did not separate between the costs that were incurred in the previous period and the costs that were incurred in this period. Therefore, in calculating our equivalent units, we have calculated our equivalent units according to the work or all of the work that has been done until this date, whether it was in the previous periods or in this periods. Of course, in the first and first out, we are going to calculate the equivalent units according to the work done in this period only. But here, as we can see, we did not separate between the work done in this period and the work done in the previous periods. Now, let us consider step number 3, 4, and 5. Any questions? Of course, step number 3 is the summarization of the total cost to account for. Of course, as we can see here from our question, we have beginning work in process and as well as, of course, the cost that has been incurred in this period. Therefore, these are the costs that we are going to account for. Therefore, we are going to start with the work in process beginning. Of course, we have the total production costs, the transferred in costs, the direct materials costs, and the conversion costs. For the beginning, we have it as it is stated in the question, 26,750, 0, and 4,020, with a total of 30,770. Of course, the other category of costs, which is the costs added in the current period. Of course, it is also stated in the question 91,510, 23,000, and 27,940, with a total of 142,450. Of course, the total cost to account for would be 173,220, and of course for the transferred in 118,260, for the direct materials 23,000, and for the conversion costs would be 31,960. These are the total costs to account for. Now, step number 4. Step number 4 is calculating the cost per equivalent unit. Of course, in the weighted average method, we are going to divide the total cost, all costs, whether incurred in this period or the previous periods, by the total equivalent units, whether these or divided by the equivalent units for the work done in all periods, whether the work done was in this period or previous periods. Therefore, in step number 4, the costs incurred up to date, which is the last step in step number 3. We are going to take the numbers as they are: 118,260, 23,000, and 31,960, divided by the equivalent units, or the total equivalent units that has been calculated in step number 2. The equivalent units is as follows: 5,400, 4,000, and 4,700. Of course, the cost per equivalent unit for the transferred in cost is $21.9. For the direct materials, 5.75, and for the conversion cost, 6.8. Now, after calculating the cost per equivalent unit, we need to assign the costs to 2 different categories: the ending work in process and the completed and transferred out. Of course, because we know the equivalent units for these 2 categories and we know the cost per equivalent unit, we can assign the cost without any problems. Therefore, step number 5, which is the last step, which is of course the assignment of costs. We are going to start with the completed and transferred out category. We have 4,000 units multiplied by the cost per unit, 21.9. We have 4,000 units for the second category of direct materials multiplied by 5.75, and we also have 4,000 units for the last category multiplied by $6.8. Therefore, the addition of these costs per different categories of costs would total 137,800. Now, for the work in process ending, of course, the completed and transferred out are 4,000 units. Now, the 1,400 units as work in process ending would be 1,400 multiplied by 21.9, 0 multiplied by 5.75, and 700 multiplied by 6.8. The addition of these costs would equal 35,420. Therefore, the total would be 173,220. For the transferred in cost, 118,260. For the direct materials, 23,000. And for the conversion costs would be 31,960. These are the total costs accounted for. And of course, as we can see here, these two numbers are equal. Any questions? Of course, if we need to journalize our entries, it would be, the first thing would be the consideration of the direct material costs. Therefore, it would be work in process. This is the drying and packaging department. This would be debited, and various, no, not various accounts, let us say the accounts payable, because this is the direct materials. The accounts payable, of course, control by the amount of 23,000. Of course, as we said, this is a summary entry. Of course, our entries in the accounting department would be, first of all, the journalization of the purchase of the direct materials, and then the use of the direct materials. But this is only a summary entry that summarizes both entries into or onto only one entry. Now let us consider the conversion costs, work in process, of course, for the drying and packaging to various accounts by the amount of 27,940, 27,940. Now at the end we have completed and transferred out from the drying and packaging department onto or into the warehouses 4,000 units with the cost of 137,800. Therefore, finished goods inventory, because this is the last department. Therefore, after this department, there would be no work in process anymore. It would be finished goods. Therefore, the finished goods inventory to work in process, drying, and packaging department by the amount of 137,800. 137,800. These are the journal entries to be considered. Of course, if we are going to post, or let us say see what would be the work in process like in the general ledger, it would be as follows. This is the work in process for the drying and packaging. Of course, we have the debit and we have the credit. The first thing we need to consider that it had specific amounts from the previous period, which is, in this case, 30,770. 26,750 as transferred in, 0 as direct materials, and 4,020 as conversion costs, with a total of 30,770. This is the, let us say, beginning balance. Of course, in this period, we have added to these costs that were incurred in the previous period, we have added 91,510, 23,000, and 27,940 with the total, or with the amount of 142,450. Of course, the 142,450 are different categories. Yani, the 142,450 should be considered as 91,510 as transferred in, 23 as direct materials, 27 and 940 as conversion costs. But here we are just taking the concept of what would be that work in process look alike or look like. Therefore, the 142,450 are the costs that added, or the costs that are added in the current period. At the end of the period, we have transferred 137,800 as finished goods. Therefore, it would be credited by 137,800. This would be as the finished goods. Therefore, the ending would be 35,420. This is the ending balance. Therefore, as we can see here, after, of course, this is the debit balance, as you can see. After taking the 137,000 from the work in process of the drying and packaging department, we are left with 35,420 as ending work in process balance. Any questions? Any questions? Now let us consider solving the same problem but using the first in, first out. Of course, according to the question, using the first in, first out, they changed only two numbers. They changed the transferred in cost, I think, for the beginning work in process, and they have changed the transferred in cost for the total cost added within the current period. What are the new amounts? Therefore, we are going to change the 26,000 and the 91,510, because as you can tell, if this department uses the FIFO, therefore the department before should also use the FIFO in order to have the consistency within the organization. So what is the transferred in? 28,920. And for the cost added within this month? 93,660. And all the other information is as it is. Now, considering the first in, first out, the same procedure, step number 1 till step number 5. Let us start with step number 1, which is the physical units. Of course, the physical units is as follows: 1,200 as beginning work in process, $1,200 transferred in the current period, $4,200. Therefore, the total units to account for 5,400. As we can see, this answers the first question, and it is not different from the weighted average method. Therefore, this is the total units to account for. Now, let us answer the second question. Where did they go? Of course, we know that 4,000 is completed and 1,400 as ending. But here in the first in, first out, we need to designate the 4,000. What is the origin of the 4,000? Was it started in this month and ended or finished in this month? Or was it started or transferred in the previous month and finished in this month? Therefore, we are going to assume that first of all, we have finished the 1,200, and then the remaining of the 4,000 units were transferred in this period and finished in this period. Therefore, completed and transferred out during the current period. Of course, we know it is 4,000, but we need to separate the work that has been started in the last period and the work that has been started in this period. Therefore, from the beginning inventory, work in process, 1,200. And the remaining, of course, would be started or transferred in this period and finished also in this period. Therefore, started and completed, or transferred in and completed, would be 2,800. Of course, as we can see, 2,800 plus 1,200 is the 4,000. It is the same 4,000 that was given in the question. And at last, the work in process ending would be the same 1,400 without any problems. Therefore, the total physical units to account for, or that has been accounted for, sorry, is 5,400. These are the accounted for units. Of course, as we can see here, the 5,400 to account for is the same as the 5,400 accounted for. Now, step number 2, calculation of equivalent units. We have the transferred in category, we have the direct materials category, and we have, of course, the conversion cost category. For the 1,002, of course, using the first in, first out, we are going to calculate the equivalent units for the work done in this period, only in this period, because we are going to separate between the costs that were incurred in the previous period and assign these costs directly to the completed and transferred out. While as the costs that are incurred in this period or within this current period would be divided on the completed and transferred out and the ending work in process. Therefore, the transferred in, it took 100% in the previous period, in the previous week. Therefore, in this week, it took 0%. Therefore, 0% multiplied by 1,200, 0. The direct materials, it took 0% in the previous year or the previous month or the previous week or the previous period. Therefore, in this period, it took 100%. Therefore, 100% multiplied by 1,200, 1,200. For the conversion costs, it took 25% in the previous period. Therefore, in this period, it took 75% of these costs. Therefore, 75% multiplied by 1,200 would be 900 equivalent units. Of course, always for the transferred in and completed, the 2,800 would be 2,800 for all the categories. Why? Because these units has been transferred in this period and finished also in this period. Therefore, all the costs that are incurred for this category are incurred within this period. Therefore, 2,800, 2,800, 2,800. Now, let us consider the work in process ending. Of course, the work in process ending inventory was transferred in this period and still is in the production phase. Therefore, it has not finished yet. Therefore, the 1,400 units took 100% in this period as transferred in cost. Therefore, 100% multiplied by 1,400, 1,400. It took 0% in this month or in this period, therefore, or in this week, 0% multiplied by 1,400, 0. and it took 50% in this month also, or in this week also, therefore 50% multiplied by 1,400 would be 700. Now the total equivalent units for the first category 4,200, for the second category 4,000, and for the last category 4,400. Any questions? Now let us consider step 3 till 5. Therefore, step number 3, which is the summarization of the total cost to account for, which is the same step without any change as the weighted average. We are going to start with the beginning work in process, the total, the transferred in, direct materials, and the conversion. Of course, the transferred in as given, 28,920. Direct materials as 0, conversion as 4,020. Of course, the costs now added in the current period, 93,660, 23,000, and 27,940. Of course, the total of these two costs are 32,940 and 144,600. Of course, the total cost to account for is 177,540, 122,580, 23,000, and 31,960. These are the total costs to account for. Of course, now we are going to consider step number 4, the calculation of the cost per equivalent unit. Of course, in the first in first out method, we are going to calculate the equivalent units for the work done in this period only. Therefore, we are going to divide not the total cost, but we are going to divide the costs that are only added within this period. Therefore, the costs that are added in the current period is as follows: 144,600, 93,660, 23,000, 27,940. Now we are going to divide this amount or these costs by the equivalent units that were calculated in step number 2. The equivalent units were 4,200, 4,000, and 4,400. Therefore, the cost per equivalent unit is as follows: 22.3, 5.75, and 6.35. Now, let us consider the last step, which is step number 5, which is the main objective of any process costing system, the assigning of or the assignment of costs onto the ending work in process and the completed and transferred out. Therefore, we have two categories now. We have the completed and transferred out. This is the first category. Of course, this first category will be assigned two different costs. The first would be the costs that were incurred in the previous period, and second would be the costs that were incurred in this period. Therefore, the work in process beginning $32,940, $28,920, 4,020. Now we are going to add on these costs the costs that were incurred to complete the beginning work in process and to start and finish the 2,800 units as completed and transferred out. Therefore, the cost added on the beginning inventory or the beginning work in process inventory. Of course, what would be the costs that are added within the or on the beginning work in process inventory? Of course, we have calculated the equivalent units for this category, correct? We have calculated for the transferred in 0 units, of course, multiplied by 22.3, 1,200 units multiplied by 5.75, and 900 multiplied by 6.35. Of course, we are here multiplying the equivalent units that were calculated in step number 2 by the costs that were calculated in step number 4. Of course, the costs that are added is 12,615. Of course, the addition of these two numbers would be 45,555, which is the costs of the beginning inventory. Not finishing, these are the total costs of the beginning inventory. Of course, they are completed, but the origin of these completed units were from the beginning inventory, beginning work in process. Of course, you add up these numbers. The second would be the started and completed, or the transferred in and completed. Of course, we have calculated the equivalent units as 2,800 for all the categories, and we are going to multiply the 2,800 by the cost per equivalent units, would equal 96,320. Of course, the addition of these two numbers, the 45,555 and the 96,320, will give us the cost of the completed and transferred out. These are the total costs for the completed. We didn't have calculated the ending work in process yet. Completed and transferred out by the amount of 141,875. Now, for the last category, which is the ending work in process. We have finished the first category. Now let us consider the second category. Of course, we also have calculated the equivalent units for this to be 1,400 for the transferred in, and 0 for the direct materials, and 700 for the conversion, with a total of 35,665. Now, of course, adding these two amounts would most definitely equal the 177,540, which is the costs accounted for. This always should equal this. Any questions?